Nurse Erica, what is the most shocking experience you've had as a nurse?
Violence against nurses and healthcare workers in general.
That's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. There is a nurse assaulted, murdered, sometimes at work. You don't hear about it in the news. It doesn't get reported, right?
What's the most significant piece of legislation you've advocated for, and why is it crucial for nurses?
The Safe Staffing Act. For example, ICU should only ever be one nurse to two patients, but they will continually triple, quadruple nurses. That means a patient's going to die.
What's the one change you would implement in the healthcare system if you had unlimited power?
It would be...
Welcome to Fargo Talks.
Fargo Talks.
Fargo Talks.
This is Fargo Talks. And we're rolling right now.
Oh.
Actually. How's that? I have to get my hair ready. Hold on. There. Nurse Erica.
Yes.
Welcome to Fargo Talks.
Thank you.
You were in my For You page.
Yes.
Right? And I'm like, this girl's good.
Aw.
This girl's good.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And we've talked off camera that my girlfriend's a nurse and she loves your content. And she's like, oh my God, you've got to get her on the show if she's ever in town.
Cool.
So
That's cool.
you were in town and the stars aligned and here we are.
Well, we got to go out sometime so I can meet her.
Done. Oh, we'll make that happen. You'll get yourself some Brandy Lee McCowan and you'll be like, oh yeah, she's a hoot. She is, I've never met or been with a more positive person in my life.
Well, see, I'm kind of the other end of the spectrum. I'm like a raging pessimist.
Fuck you.
Honestly, I'm a lot better than I used to be. I used to be way more pessimistic, but I'm still geared towards that end. Yeah.
I have, as a preface to all this, before we get into questions, is I have great respect for what you do.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll start crying. Like tremendous. I took care of my mom for over 6 months. She was, COPD, was living north of Tampa, went off of her medications and was 79, turning 80 at the time, and had a doggy and would get really bad dementia from yeast infection.
Yeah.
And, urinary tract infection, UTI. UTI is what she would have. It's what she had.
Common
and
in older people.
Fiercely independent. So she would have it. Like I'd fly out there and the house was a mess.
Yeah.
And we won't get into details of a mess, but for you, you're like, oh, Code Brown, whatever, where I'm like, oh,
that's a Wednesday.
I'm like, that's called a Wednesday.
Right.
and I would go get to the hospital, get her into rehab, back on meds. She'd go home, go off everything again. And it was like playing ping pong 3 times.
Yeah.
And I finally got her out here. But like, I just remember the nurses watching, I watched people and watching the stress they were under. I watched one woman, she quit and she's crying. And I'm with my mom, but the door's open, you could hear it.
The nurse quit?
Yeah, and this was at Oak Hill Hospital in Brooksville, Florida. The administrators there, you fucking suck. You guys are fucking assholes because your nurses are amazing and you are disconnected with the nurses that are there. Get better.
Did they quit like mid-shift though?
I think it was after shift, but she'd had it. But this is what happened is, and I'm an empath, I'm a hugger. I want to cure everybody and help everyone, listen to everyone's problems. And she was raging and then she kind of settled down. And I went out and I said, hey, I don't know you from Adam, but you're an amazing person.
Aww.
And this place is going to lose a lot. And the people here are going to lose a lot if you leave. And she started crying.
And nurses need to hear that because we never get positive feedback like
I hugged
that.
her and I just said, I don't know what happened here, but I'm telling you, the grass will not be greener at another hospital. You've got to please just dig deep and see what you can do to stay.
Yeah.
And she was very thankful. She's crying, and I think it just kind of helped at least make it a softer landing, or I think she came back the next day, actually.
Oh, good. Okay.
So she did, but I just did little things.
It makes a difference.
For Thanksgiving, my mom was there. I got turkey dinners delivered for, there was 9, there's 9 people on the shift on her floor. I got 9 turkey dinners for all the nurses.
So cool.
Subway
really
was down,
nice.
thank you. Subway was in the first floor. Whenever I went down to get a sandwich or a treat for my mom, I got 9 of those chewy chocolate chip cookies and brought them up and just put it at the nurse's station.
Yeah.
Wanting nothing in return, but also as an FYI, if you have a friend or somebody that's getting cared for, when you do that, those nurses were...
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a secret, though. We love getting food and stuff, and that's all what's so appreciated. But if you really, really want to get in their good graces, bring them really good coffee for the nurses, like really good coffee. And also, you know what we never get is anything remotely healthy. So people will like order pizza for us. And we're like, oh God, I'm really trying to be better. If you get a couple veggie platters and fruit platters, stuff like that, we love that. We can graze on that in the break room, but coffee, get us really good coffee.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so the way I do this show is we just talk. Like I have some questions, but we just kind of riff and talk. We go for as long as we want to go for.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's it. And then I have people that we do clips, short form videos, like what you put out, and then they go everywhere. And then I'll add you as a collaborator, and stuff will go on, and then it's really just cool parts of this conversation is what gets clipped, and then off it goes. Everything will be respectful to you. Everything will be nurse positive.
Good.
I always say this is a neutral spot, but this is an exception for this because of the love of my life.
Stop.
Is in healthcare.
You're so sweet.
And
Stop it. You're going to make me cry.
And because of you, the literally millions of people that you've touched, being a nurse's advocate, is I felt it a moral imperative to have you on and to make this a really nurse positive, healthcare positive episode of my show. Okay. And I just raised by Roman Catholic Italians in upstate New York, so I'm a very emotional guy. So
that's okay.
It is what it is. But so I've come up with some questions, but if there's things that you want to bring up as well that I don't bring up, by all means, interject them. Like the thing about bring good coffee to nurses. And also I think people should be aware that when you are, because I was in it, when you are taking care of a loved one and going to visit a loved one in the hospital, the one who is really taking care of them is their nurse. Always.
Yep.
Like the doctor makes rounds, but
they see them for half a minute, 2 minutes tops, once a day. Yeah. It's the nurse that is there.
It's the nurse. And you really, as much as you love and care for your loved one or friend you're going to visit, you bring them flowers or a card or whatever, to bring also something, it should be synonymous to bring something for the nurse. Every time.
I agree.
Every single time.
Obviously no one has to do that, but
yes, they do.
They're going to get good care no matter what. But
they are.
It's appreciated.
I think that it is. I think it is something mandatory. I think it's like peanut butter and jelly just go together.
Yeah.
That if you're going to see somebody or you have a loved one in the hospital and they're under the care of a nurse or nurses, you bring something out of respect for them.
That's nice. I love it.
It's just because I hear the horror stories. I've seen it.
Yeah.
You hear people yelling and screaming, and even worse, the family members yelling and screaming at the nurses.
All the time.
And I'm like,
constantly.
How fucking dare you?
Oh, and physically, we get assaulted on a daily basis.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ask your girlfriend. Yeah. It's like epidemic levels. Yeah. Violence against nurses and healthcare workers in general, astronomical rates. Every single day in this country, there is a nurse assaulted, murdered, sometimes raped at work. Like you don't hear about it in the news. It doesn't get reported, right? Which is problematic. And that's part of the reason that I do what I do, because no one else is going to report on stuff. But yeah, it's out of control. And I will tell you the worst part. When we are physically assaulted, sometimes permanently disabled, and then we are called into our manager's office afterwards, they will consistently, unanimously, no matter where you work, ask you one thing. What could you have done differently to prevent that? I'm not kidding.
Wow.
It is the epitome of victim blaming. And that's the mentality with nurses, though, is that we have to give, and sacrifice everything for patients. And that, unfortunately, persists today, that mentality. And that's one of the reasons that I do what I do. Yeah. And then they will tell us, You can't file a police report because it's a patient. They didn't know any better. You can't do that. Well, yes, you can, and you should. It is your right as an American citizen to file that police report. And until everybody starts consistently doing that, it's not going to change.
I'm blown away. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
every day.
Unbelievable.
Google it. Say, Google nurse assaulted, pick your city. You'll get a bunch of hits.
And obviously the hospitals try to sweep it under the rug.
Always.
Right? Mm-hmm. And it's something that we'll get into because of the whole, the entire, just how they go past each other, administration and nurses. Mm-hmm. And for you, it's the analogy I use is like it's the first 10 minutes of Saving Private Ryan every day.
Oh gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right?
That's 10 minutes. Yeah.
That's your day.
That scene.
That's your shift. That's your 12-hour shift.
Yes, that's a great analogy, actually. Yeah.
Right? Like that's
and that's how it starts even. We don't even get to like ease into the shift.
Well, again, I'll start because I love her so much, but we were doing something and we were going somewhere and I said, we went to dinner with friends on the Strip at MGM at a restaurant a couple weeks ago. And I said, she goes, I'm going to have to pee. I go, okay, well, you got to pee? No, I'm used to holding it for 12 hours.
Right.
It's okay.
We have a nurse's bladder. Yeah. That's a thing.
And I'm like,
and astronomical rates of UTI and kidney infections and issues as a result. Yeah.
Okay. Let's start from the beginning, my little love.
Let's do it.
What inspired you to become a nurse advocate and how did your journey begin?
It was never a plan. I'm the least likely person in the world to do anything on social media. My social media experience prior to this, 5 years ago or so, was posting dance pictures of my kids on Facebook. That was it. And then early 2020.
Do me a favor. Bring this a little bit closer to you. I want everyone to hear every word you're talking about. Bring it like 2 inches closer to you. I know, it's like a little awkward there.
Is that good?
Perfect, yes.
Early 2020, when the world shut down, my son moved back home, so I had both my kids at home, and I just keep hearing about this thing called TikTok. I have no idea. So in true helicopter mom fashion, I downloaded TikTok to spy on my kids, just like I did with Snapchat years ago, and somehow ended up on, the side of nurse TikTok and was fascinated. But what I noticed is that there was nothing from a leadership perspective. No nurse managers, directors, chief nursing officer, nothing like that. It was bedside. And that's, what it should be. But I thought, I have a very unique perspective. And the one thing I will say I'm blessed with that a lot of nurses are lacking is courage. And so I am very much of I don't give a fuck. I'm going to tell you the truth every single time at great personal risk. And that's fine. That's fine because it needs to be talked about. So I started talking about it on TikTok and it took off. And before I knew it, here we are 4 or 5 years later, and I'm on every social media platform. I think I have about 1 million followers across social media and the podcast, and I travel and I give keynote speeches and I go to nursing rallies and nursing strikes around the country, and I put a spotlight on everything that no one else will put a spotlight on.
I'm going to, for those of you that are watching, that's redundant because if you're watching, you're fucking watching a goddamn podcast. Erica's going to be tagged as a collaborator on everything. She'll be tagged in YouTube, everything. So I highly recommend you follow her. If you are in the healthcare field and you want to have Erica come speak at an event, please reach out to her and have her come be the tip of the spear of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to just get the message out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll be saying that several times throughout the episode. Can you share a moment in your nursing career that completely changed your perspective on healthcare?
First job as a new grad nurse. Had a very good friend of mine. We went through nursing school together. We worked as nurse apprentices together. And started at the same place as a new grad nurse together. And just a couple weeks after getting off orientation, I get a random phone call from my nurse manager saying, come and meet with me before your shift tonight. No idea why. I go, I'm waiting outside her office, and my friend, I call her Marlene. That's not her real name, but I've told this story before. She comes out of her office, tears everywhere, looking very shook up. No idea why. We look at each other. I go in the office, and my manager tells me that I'm a failure. I've been a nurse 2 weeks, maybe a week at that point on my own. That she's had nothing but complaints about me from every patient, every family member. I ask for examples. She provides none, says that she can't. That's very common with nurse managers. And berates me for a long time, and then tells me, if I get a single more complaint about you, you will be terminated. I didn't know anything back then about my rights like I do now. I thought, okay, I'm a failure as a nurse, and surely eventually she'll get a complaint because it's inevitable, and I will be terminated. What we came to find out through a course of events is that she did this to all the new grad nurses. All of them.
It's like a litmus test?
No, I think it was her sick, twisted way of ensuring like the highest customer satisfaction, that we were so scared and bullied into submission that we were bending over backwards to do every little stupid, tiny request for every patient, every visitor, for fear of someone complaining and being terminated.
Retribution.
So that it reflected great on her because her unit had all these, really high customer satisfaction rates. Exactly. Yeah. And so I stayed long enough to get like my new grad time out of my way. And then I left. I was not about to stay there. It was very toxic. My friend Marlene, though, did stay. And she was subjected to more of that abuse for a very long time, consistently. I would get calls from her all the time. She was getting called into the office again by that manager. She was being threatened again. It was brutal, and it was relentless. And not very long into her nursing career, she took her own life. And I know that played a part.
That's awful.
That was my introduction to nursing.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm
from
so sorry.
day one. And I carried that with me for years, trying to prove myself that I wasn't a failure, that I was a good nurse. It took me years to finally get past that and realize that was toxic and that wasn't me, and I'm doing a good job.
What steps do you take as a nurse to know that you're a good nurse?
I think if you can feel like you've made a difference at the end of the day, if you know that you're advocating for your patient, no matter how challenging and scary that can be sometimes to go toe-to-toe with the doctor or management, administration. But that's our job. That's what we have to do, is advocate for patients. So if you're doing that, you're doing something right. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to suffer retaliation for doing the right thing, for doing your job, because nursing is retaliation. But if you're doing that, then you're doing the right thing.
Is that the most shocking experience you've had in nursing directly?
I've had so many. I really feel like it's almost a PTSD kind of trauma response, that I block out a lot of things until something reminds me of it. So like an old coworker will say, "Remember that time?" And I'll be like, "Oh my God, totally forgot about that." Yeah, I mean, there's been so many, things that I see behind the curtain, so to speak, working in management and leadership, just the absolute corruption, of forcing discharges, for example, of patients that are not safe discharges. They're not ready to be discharged. They don't have anywhere to be discharged to. Seeing them be put on a bus shipped out of state because a for-profit hospital didn't want to lose any more money on that patient.
Can you say where? I don't want to get you in trouble, by the way. If you're not cool saying it, don't say it. I don't want to put you in trouble
I'll
at
say
all.
it was here in Las Vegas.
Okay. I experienced here at St. Rose, whatever the one is on Eastern.
Okay.
You guys fucking suck. They fucking suck. They discharged me with, I had a gangrenous gallbladder, had it removed. It took 3 days for them to find out that it was my gallbladder. And this was years ago. And I had where the insertion site,
IV,
where the IV stuck in my vein in my right arm was puffy. And the discharge nurse said, "You're fine. You're okay. Go home." And the next day it just got bigger and bigger, became like shiny. And I go to work and my boss was like, "Dude, you need to go to the doctor. That's bad." I got my primary care physician at the time, was awesome, got me in. He's like, "You need to go back to the hospital now."
Yeah.
They discharged my head. It was infected.
Yeah.
And they discharged me. What? So I'll never go back to St. Rose ever again. Ever. I could have lost my leg and be hopping down St. Rose from Costco, and I'll just put a tourniquet on it and go somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that from a nurse's perspective, and I think, okay, well, and not to diminish anything that you went through. Obviously, I was not there, but if it infiltrated, meaning a little bit of fluid, it kind of got displaced out of the vein. And so then some fluid was in the interstitial space instead of where it was meant to be. You can get a little swelling from that, and then they take it out. And that should resolve. That should reabsorb and go down. So if it was a little swelling like that and they discharge you, that's not actually inappropriate. But if they missed signs of like a phlebitis or something, then, that's problematic.
It was bad. So I'll say it. Yeah, St. Rose, fuck you. I'll say it. I don't care because I have the proof. Please come after me. Please, my kids have to go to college, maybe. We'll see. I'm trying to get them by income properties instead, but we'll see what happens. How do you handle the pressure of being a public figure while staying true to your mission as a nurse advocate?
So I kind of live in my own little bubble where I like to believe that no one knows who I am. So I'm very much like in leggings and jeans at the grocery store and my hair in a messy bun, thinking no one knows who I am. And then I will get stopped, not always, but sometimes. And I kind of am always shocked. Any nurse that's ever met me where I'm not at an event, but I'm just like in my daily life somewhere, not in a hospital, but somewhere, will tell you that I'm so awkward because I never expect it. And, I'm always kind of fumbling like, you want to talk to me? And God, I look a mess. And, so that's kind of weird for me, but I always appreciate it and love to talk to them. But as far as being like an advocate online, that is everything that I've always done, just on a smaller scale. That is not difficult for me at all. Anyone that's ever worked with me will tell you that I've always been the loud voice for nurses, but it was the unit that I worked on that I was doing it for, or myself, or my coworker, or my hospital, my company. Now it's just a bit bigger, but I'm doing everything as vocally as I have always done. That's no different.
Will nurses reach out to you, DMs, whatever, and how's that feel when they reach out and just say thank you?
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, I get that every single day. Yeah, I've had nurses tell me that I've saved their life, that they were thinking about taking their own life, that I've given them hope, that it's okay if you need to stop being a nurse or if you need to leave bedside and do something non-traditional as a nurse, that's okay. Prioritize yourself because they won't. They won't prioritize your health.
What is, in your opinion, again, I preface this question by saying every single nurse in any position is critical and respected and admired. Mm-hmm. Is there a nursing position, because I don't know any of this stuff at all, except that I sleep with a nurse who I love very much. That's about it. And or she sleeps with me. It's, is there a nursing position that is one of the most stressful, if not the most stressful in the profession?
There's so many. Obviously, critical care, ICU, ER, pediatric ICU is often overlooked. Nurses typically will not last very long in PICU because of the gravity of what you have to deal with. That's a hard one. But you know what else is like rural hospitals, remote access hospitals. Those nurses have no resources and they have to do everything.
They have a big toolbox that they have to draw from.
Yeah.
And they have to create their own tools.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that's,
I've
never done that. I've never done remote access nursing, rural, and I wouldn't want to. Give me basic resources.
Well, but there's no specialist, or I shouldn't say that, but the access to specialists is like hours away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that what happens?
Yeah, there's actually, this will blow your mind. There's actually some places where there's not even an ER doc in the ER because it's so rural that they will have one or two nurses. And then when someone comes in, because it's not real common, they call the doctor and the doctor has to drive in. Like, what is that? Yeah, it's because they don't want to pay him to be there. They would rather pay him a fraction to be on call, of course.
We're going to come to that.
Yeah.
What's the most significant piece of legislation you've advocated for, and why is it crucial for nurses?
Oh, well, there's 3 pieces of legislation right now that are crucial for nursing. But if I had to pick one, it would be it's a mouthful. The Nurse Staffing Standards for Hospital Patient Safety and Quality of Care Act. Nicknamed the Safe Staffing Act. And so this basically would give us mandated nurse-to-patient ratios, similar to California. California, until recently, has been the only state to have mandated nurse-to-patient ratios. Oregon recently passed similar legislation. But this would give us federally mandated nurse-to-patient ratios based on the specialty. So, for example, ICU should only ever be 1 nurse to 2 patients, and in some cases, 1 nurse to 1 patient, right? Should never, ever, under any circumstances, no matter what, be beyond 2 patients. But they will continually triple, quadruple nurses. That means a patient's going to die as a result, right? So if you could push your representatives to pass anything, it would be that. The Safe Staffing Act. But I will tell you that it gets reintroduced every year. We're in the 118th Congress, and it'll die again this year, and it'll get reintroduced next year. And the really sad and frustrating part for me is it doesn't even get voted on year after year. Like, it'll get introduced, and it'll get assigned to a committee, and it will die in the committee year after year, and then it has to be reintroduced for the next congressional session. So even imagine 2020, 2021, where everyone's banging pots and pans and we are healthcare heroes and we can do no wrong. Even then, the Senate, the House of Representatives, refused to even vote on it. They couldn't even be bothered to get it out of committee to hold a vote. That is how much we are valued.
Why won't it get out of committee?
I mean, it all comes down to money, right? Healthcare organizations have more money and power than God.
Lobbyists.
They have lobbyists. Absolutely, they do. And they perpetuate myths, like the nursing shortage. That's not real. Yeah, that's not real.
Really?
That's not real. Yeah. It is one of the most pervasive lies ever bestowed upon the American public, is that there's a shortage of nurses. Yeah. There's over 5 million nurses in this country, and it consistently goes up every single year. Find me one person that doesn't know a nurse or multiple nurses. We're the largest workforce in the country. Every nursing school graduates 3 times a year at least, full classes of nurses. They turn away qualified applicants every single semester. There's more than enough nurses to fill every single vacancy. What there is a staffing shortage because nurses refuse to work at the bedside because we are taking our license into our own hands every single time we step foot in that hospital, that nursing home, that rehab. And the Bachelor of Science degree in nursing is consistently voted the most challenging baccalaureate level degree that there is, right? We work damn hard to get our degree. It is not an easy process to become a nurse. And we know if we step foot in that hospital, that nursing home, there's a good chance we might lose our license that we worked so hard for. So we aren't willing to do that. We aren't willing to let ourselves be physically assaulted at work and then be manipulated and gaslit. We aren't willing to put ourselves in a position where we report what we know is illegal activity or wrongdoing or abuse and then be retaliated and fired for doing the right thing. We aren't willing to do that. So there's a staffing crisis, but there are more than enough nurses by far to fill every single vacancy in this country.
When you're talking about that, I'm thinking my cousin, who is a couple years younger than me, and a few years younger than me, and she's in upstate New York, and she went to Penn State and got her nursing degree.
Okay.
Back in the, early 90s. So before the nursing wave really came on.
Yeah.
And she got it. She was a traveling nurse for a while, and then she moved back to Canandaigua, New York, our hometown. She's there now. And she was in ER forever, but then recently got out.
Okay.
Because I think she's had enough.
Yeah.
She had enough of the drama and the liability. I'm speaking on her behalf, but the liability you put yourself in.
It's huge. Well, and now nurses are being criminally prosecuted, right? So that's a whole other layer.
What?
Oh, yeah. 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 So they have, look up the case of Redonda Vaught. She's a good friend of mine. She was a nurse that worked for Vanderbilt. When was this? 2 years ago, I guess, 2022. She was put on trial for the death of a patient where she had an unintentional medication error. So we are now criminally prosecuting nurses. So we have this whole civil court system, right? And we have malpractice cases, and we have boards of nursing that can strip you of your nursing license. We have all these things in place that have always been the avenues to address things for nurses, like an adverse situation, right? But now they've taken the leap and bypassed all of those things and gone directly to criminally prosecuting nurses.
Describe for me, a layman, what an unintentional medication error is. What's that mean?
So I'm not talking about these crazy rare angel of death cases, that you hear about once in a rare while where a nurse went around injecting insulin into all the patients because maybe they wanted to be the one to come in and save them. And those are rare. Okay, I'm not talking about that. That's on some other level.
Like Munchausen's
right?
by proxy, isn't that?
I mean, kind of, in a way.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm talking about normal human error. People think that we are superhuman and we should never make a mistake. Well, we're not. And when you're not given the basic resources that you need, when you're given twice as many patients as you can physically take care of, the rate of errors is going to go up, right? So an unintentional medication error is you meant no harm. You did something that, maybe it was the wrong dose. It was too high. Maybe it was the wrong medication. In the case of the nurse that I mentioned, the hospital had all of the safety checks removed for weeks and weeks. They were going through an upgrade, a change in their system. So the nurse couldn't scan anything. All the safety checks that we're supposed to have were gone. So you accidentally have a medication error, meaning no harm. That's unintentional.
What ended up happening with the case?
That the patient died. It's a fascinating case if you ever want to get into it. She was investigated by the Board of Nursing initially, and they allowed her to continue to keep her nursing license because, they understood these things happen. She was allowed to keep working for a couple of years. And then a district attorney in Nashville who just happened to be running for re-election and needed a nice high-profile case thought, that's the one. So criminally charged her with, homicide and put her through hell. And it took a couple of years to get her to go to court. And in the meantime, the Board of Nursing, for some unknown reason, decided to reinvestigate her, even though there was no new information whatsoever, and stripped her of her license. Like, it's all very corrupt. And it all leads back to Vanderbilt Hospital. Honestly.
Where is she now? What's she doing now? Do you know?
She's a farmer.
Good for her. Oh, my God.
And she's happy.
I was going to say, that's all that matters. And my next question was that, is she at peace?
Yeah.
Is she okay?
She was convicted. She was found guilty. She, by just like the skin of her teeth, was able to be sentenced under judicial diversion because the law at the time of the incident was that she could be given probation. In the meantime, by the time it went to trial, it had changed. And so now anyone in that state in the same situation will go to prison. She was able to get 3 years of probation, which she's currently serving. Yeah.
So she's a farmer on probation.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And so that was like the first big criminal prosecution of nurses. And that was, in the middle of the pandemic, right? When nurses are being beaten down every which way.
Yeah.
And then they throw in this whole other terrifying layer. And it started a cascade. And I wish I could say that was one isolated case, but no. Every single day now, nurses are being criminally charged and prosecuted because we're human and we make errors. And what the public doesn't realize, like, they hear these cases and they think, wow, someone died, like the nurse should pay for that, right? What you don't understand is this little concept called just culture. And what that means is that nurses have to be able to safely report errors or near misses because we need to be able to know how it happened so we can change the process in place so that it won't happen again to another patient in the future. But now we can't do that. We can't safely report it. Because would you? No. Me as a single mom working bedside for so long, if something like that happened to me 20 years ago, I would have reported it. Now? No. Why would I? Why would I risk being thrown in prison, losing my license, not being able to take care of my kids because I'm human and I made an accident? I'm never going to report that. And the vast majority of nurses are not going to report it. And so that means now it is exponentially more dangerous for you, for your wife, for your daughter, for your grandfather to be a patient in the hospital because things happen and they're not getting reported.
What country do you think has the best healthcare system and why?
Oh, like Sweden, Scandinavian countries. They've got it figured out. Yeah.
How do they have it figured out? Because we're so broken here.
We're so broken.
So I
just unbelievably broken.
I need to take a break just for a second from that. We'll go back into it. But talk to me a little bit about Sweden, Scandinavian countries. What are they doing to get it right with healthcare?
I mean, of course, they have, national healthcare, right? So it's not private pay like it is here. And, that's a whole debate that people want to have. But whether you like it or not, they have far better outcomes there. Patients are happier. Healthcare workers are happier. They're not being pushed beyond their limits. They're given resources. Patients are not forced out of the hospital before they're ready. I actually did a podcast about this on my podcast with a Swedish nurse who now works in the U.S. comparing it. And it's mind-blowing, night and day.
I'm blown away.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely blown away. Good for you, by the way, for having a Swedish nurse on.
Oh, of course.
Just from one podcast to another, I'm like, good for you, my love. Like, that's just, I love your brain, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love your brain.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You've talked about the red and black ribbon campaign. Can you explain its importance and what changes you hope it will bring?
Yeah. So I co-created this with a good friend of mine, Matthew, in the wake of a terrible incident a couple of years ago at, Methodist Dallas Hospital in the labor and delivery unit. A father of a newborn baby was there visiting, was on house arrest, had the ankle bracelet on, but had been given permission to go to the hospital for the birth of his baby. Had been acting erratic for days, and everyone expressed concern. He brought guns into the hospital unbeknownst because there's no metal detectors in most hospitals. There's no security. He shot and killed a registered nurse and a social worker in the labor and delivery unit. And so my friend and I were on the phone in the wake of that one night saying, what can we do? Like something, we need an actionable event that nurses and healthcare workers and the public can grasp onto to make a statement. And, we came up with an awareness ribbon. Okay, what color? Well, the colors for homicide are red and black. And this was right after the double homicide. So we went with a red and black ribbon. And anyone can do it. You can go buy a ribbon at your fabric store. I do have an Etsy store where I made an enamel pin version because people were asking for it. But it is to make a statement about violence against nurses and healthcare workers, that we're not going to tolerate it. And also to raise awareness because the public remains vastly unaware of the violence against nurses. And so it sparks conversations. They see the nurses wearing a pin and they ask about it. And then we can say, well, actually, there is this whole epidemic of violence against healthcare. And they're shocked. They never hear about it.
I'm blown away now. I have goosebumps and it's not good.
Yeah.
Like the hair in the back of my neck is up of what's going on. Isn't there like a nurses union to protect?
Well, this is one of my favorite subjects ever, unions. There is no national nursing union. And the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of nurses are not unionized at all. It would be a game changer if they were. California's got it figured out for the most part. They have had for like 20 years now the California Nurses Association Union. And they, of course, have the mandated ratios and mandated breaks and protections and all these things that we don't have anywhere else. Healthcare organizations spare no expense at keeping unions out. They hire union busters for millions of dollars to keep unions out. And it's very, very difficult for nurses to get unionized as a result.
This is off the top of my head. I have a friend who's in town here that I was talking to him about when Brandy was moving out and getting a job and all that. And he says, well, living here in Vegas, it is a very much, people always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, it's really big here. Like the size of your Rolodex is big here. It gets a lot done, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, need any help? I know the C-level guy at this hospital, C-level guy at this hospital. And a big part of me, after having this conversation, wants to see if I could get like one of those guys or ladies to come in and you.
Ooh.
and have a talk.
They're not really a fan of me. I can tell you that right now.
And that's why, and again, I'm like, if they see this, they see this. And with all due respect to everybody, because I try to really, I work hard here to provide a neutral forum for anyone to come in to give them a voice, right? Sometimes people I don't agree with, but still get to give them a voice because that's the best part of living in this country.
Yeah.
Is anybody with a voice should be heard. To have them come in, but maybe like I talk to you ahead of time and say, all right, I'm having, John Doe come in from XYZ Healthcare. But from this, I already have like a litany of things to bring up. So
yeah.
that's just an aside. It's an ADHD thing. I was like, oh, I need to have somebody like not a counterpoint, but just somebody to come in because it's so broken.
It's so broken.
And it's national. It's not just here in Vegas. It's a national thing. It's everywhere in the United States of America.
Yeah.
The healthcare system is broken.
Fundamentally.
And nobody's doing anything about it because of the overwhelming amount of money from lobbyists going and feeding Washington. So any type of legislation to protect healthcare workers doesn't even get out of committee.
Correct.
That's a shame.
It is.
That is an absolute shame.
It's inexcusable.
It's inexcusable.
Yeah.
Okay. Pivoting.
Okay.
Social media has given you a platform to advocate for change. What's the most surprising thing you've learned from your followers?
Probably how uneducated they are when it comes to their rights.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I get it because I was that nurse way back when. But I learned, when I was retaliated against, I did the research. I did my homework and I found out what my rights were and who I can report what to and how I can fight back. And I didn't win every battle, but I always learned from it and I did it better the next time. Nurses don't do that. They tend to hide their head in shame if they're, say, terminated, suspended, or reported to the Board of Nursing. There's a lot of shame associated with that. And they just tuck their tail between their legs and they leave and they go find a new job. And you never hear about it. They don't report things. And healthcare organizations know that 99.9% of nurses will not report anything. So they get away with it, right? Because even the 0.1 that does, well, if they lose that occasional case once in a rare while, they're still winning,
More
right?
money.
Yeah.
They have more money.
Yeah.
I implore upon you to follow Nurse Erica on every social media platform that she's on. If there's a platform that she's not on, DM her and say, hey, asshole, get on whatever. And that's something that we're going to talk about offline anyways, because I'm going to do some pro bono work for you and I want to help you out to grow your audience.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I would love that.
I'm going to dedicate some of my time to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start crying. Like, it's just,
Stop.
No, thank you. Like, my biggest love language is acts of service.
Yeah, me too.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so if I can do a little bit with what I'm pretty good at this thing, and I'm not at your level, but if 2 to 4 million people a month are staring at this, like, come on. So I want to help.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll talk after about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's my pleasure. How do you deal with criticism or cancel culture, especially when it targets your advocacy efforts?
Not always very well, to be perfectly honest. I can be sometimes too reactionary. Not always. Sometimes I handle things, with grace and I rise above. But then there's other times if I'm in a mood or something, or it's just been too much, and you're an ass, I'm going to tell you you're an ass, right? So sometimes I can be way too reactionary. I'm aware of it. I'm a work in progress. It gets better as the years go on. So I don't always take criticism well, but what I don't think people understand is it does not come from, it doesn't come from a place of me feeling like, how dare you criticize me? It really comes from a place of, I have work to do and what I'm doing is important. And let's be honest, no one else is doing what I do. So stop trying to be a roadblock in my mission, because what I'm doing has a greater good. And you and your loved ones, who will all eventually be hospitalized, will benefit from the work that I'm doing. So don't waste my time with your criticisms and your attacks and cancel culture bullshit. Like, I don't have time for that.
Full stop.
Full stop.
Full stop. I love that. I love that. Your point is this. You can disagree with what I'm saying, with my message. Mm-hmm. However, my heart's in the right place. I have an infinite amount of experience in this role
Yeah.
and in multiple levels, from being a nurse's assistant to an RN to administration, a leadership role in nursing. And I'm not perfect.
No, I'm very flawed.
And
Very flawed.
As we all are, my love, as we all are. And so sometimes you're going to catch me on a good day. Sometimes you catch me on a bad day. But know this, my heart's in the right place.
Yes.
And there is a 99.9% chance that, or 100% chance actually, that you or a loved one is going to be under the care of a nurse at some point in their life.
Yes.
And I'm trying to make that person better to take care of you and or your loved ones.
Correct.
Full stop.
That's it.
That's like your mission statement.
Kind of.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God. I'm going to make a fucking bumper sticker out of that. I love that so much. Oh my God. What's your advice for new nurses who feel disillusioned with the profession? Like your first 2 weeks.
Yeah. Mine was pretty bad. It's so hard now. Like even before the pandemic and decades ago, being a new nurse that first year and a half or so is the hardest thing in the world. But now it's damn near impossible. Do you know that 1 in 18 new nurses contemplate suicide their first year? 1 in 18. Their first year out. Yeah, it's terrible. It's absolutely like a no-win situation, you know? So what I always tell them is, first of all, if we're talking about a situation like that, and it's truly your well-being and your mental health on the line to where you might do something to hurt yourself, cut your losses and go immediately. Don't even give your 2 weeks notice. Like that takes priority. But if you're in a situation where it's just incredibly, incredibly stressful, as much as I hate to say it, you've got to get through that all-important first year. Like you have to get a year under your belt, bare minimum, at the bedside. So not in home health or something else. Like you need a bare minimum 1 full year at the bedside in acute care, in a hospital. And then the world kind of opens up. You know, it's better if you get 2 years, but get at least a year. And then you can kind of go and do a lot of other things as a nurse, you know, which is one of the great things about nursing is there is a lot of options of what you can do. So if you can hack it, you know, and that's not a reflection of them as a new grad, it's the environment that we're put into, get your first year in and then go somewhere else that's hopefully not as toxic.
And
that
be
has
prepared.
More support.
Be prepared that it is going to be the first 10 minutes of Saving Private Ryan every day for a year to 2 years.
Damn day.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And then after that, you've earned your stripes that can then branch out to somewhere that hopefully is not, or at least you know the red flags.
Yeah.
Then you can go somewhere else in a different field under the nursing umbrella.
Yes.
That's where you have the support and it's not as toxic.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yes. And also just to educate themselves about their rights. Know what an employer can and cannot legally do to you. They count on you not knowing, and they take advantage of that to manipulate you.
What are some of the big red flags that, like manipulation tactics, that nurses should be aware of that they're not aware of?
Managers telling them that they've heard from coworkers such and such about them, or they've heard complaints from patients, and then you ask for an example, and I can't. They asked to remain anonymous. I can't share that with you. Well, okay, but you're telling me this every week. Clearly, there's a pattern of targeted harassment. So until you are willing to give me the information so that I can make an informed decision to explain, you know, where I'm coming from, what actually may have happened, what you're saying either isn't true or, you know, it's one-sided and you're not giving me an opportunity to defend myself. That happens all the time. They target a nurse, they make it miserable in hopes that they'll quit so they don't have to fire them. You know, what could you have done differently? Like I said before, when we are physically or verbally assaulted, What could you have done different? That's like the epitome of manipulation, right? And victim blaming. Unfortunately, a lot of, I hate to say like narcissists because I think that's overused.
It is.
It is. But there is that personality type that is drawn to leadership positions for a reason, right? And so there is a disproportionate amount.
Inflated validation.
Correct. Of narcissists and people with, narcissistic personality disorder, although it's rare, there is a disproportionate high amount in these leadership positions. And so a lot of, I always get crucified when I say this, but the reality is that a lot of nurse managers and nursing leadership is toxic. And they never think it's them. But it's them. It's them. If you have a very high turnover rate of nurses, that is a reflection of management, whether they want to hear it or not, And so there's a lot of manipulative communication tactics from nurse leaders to bedside nurses, There's a lot of I call whataboutisms, So you go to your manager and you say, look, staffing is so dangerous and this happened to this patient on this shift because I had 3 more patients than we were supposed to have. And, we don't have a CNA. Like, what are you doing? And the manager, instead of answering any of your direct questions, says, well, what about the fact that you were 3 minutes late? And you're over here like, no, I'm talking to you about a patient death that was avoidable. What about the fact that you called in sick twice last month? These constant deflections, right? These whataboutisms. That is pervasive from nursing leadership, pervasive.
Oh, we could talk for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
Just for the record, my God. Can you share a story where your advocacy directly led to change in a healthcare setting?
Oh, well, I know that there's facilities that after I put a highlight on violent events that have happened there, they suddenly will get metal detectors, for example, because they're tired of me talking about it and putting a highlight on them, a spotlight on them, So I'm pretty proud of that. I know there's plenty of nurses that have unionized as a direct result of my work and hearing how to do it and the benefit of doing it. So I'm very, very proud of that. And then there's a lot of individual stories from, individual nurses that have just prioritized their own well-being and are now able to recognize the manipulation and the toxicity when it happens instead of falling victim to it for years and years and years.
What's the biggest misconception people have about nurses and how do you address it?
Oh, there's so many. Nursing is a calling. No, it does not have to be a calling. We are not nuns anymore, for the love of God. Stop perpetuating that bullshit.
Remember the hats?
The hats, for real. Like, what?
It was awful.
And they still do this.
Candy stripers?
Yes.
Jesus.
But they still suffer under the delusion that, it's a calling, right? And it can be a calling for some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I am here to tell you that it does not have to be a calling, and it isn't for the majority of nurses, and there's nothing wrong with that. We do not have to sacrifice our entire well-being and our family's well-being for the almighty patient. And patients believe that we do. They truly do. And families believe that we need to sacrifice everything for them. We sacrifice so much. We miss so much out of our life, our kids' lives, constantly. That has to stop. This whole mentality of you must sacrifice everything. It's a calling. You're lucky to be taking care of patients in their most vulnerable state. Well, yeah, okay, sure, we are. But stop with this manipulation and this victim blaming. Like, we are people. We are people. We're not angels. We're not nuns. Stop treating us like we should be.
How do you stay mentally and emotionally strong while facing the challenges of nursing and advocacy?
Not always, right? Like I said earlier, sometimes I get way too reactionary, but, I do have an overabundance of courage or just a loud mouth. I don't know what it is, but I've always been that way. So I don't shy away from saying the hard things, knowing that it will often result in me being targeted and harassed by a different hospital, healthcare organization, whomever. I don't shy away from that. That comes easy to me. So that part's not hard for me at all. I'm always going to be 100% transparent and honest, even if it doesn't look good for me.
It's a great answer, man. It's a great fucking answer. How do you foresee the role of nurses evolving in the next decade?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I really think that the nursing profession right now is kind of headed for inevitable implosion. Like it's so far past the point of broken. It's, a dumpster fire snowballing down the hill towards, just an explosion, right? And I almost, in a weird way, hope that happens because I feel like we can't fix it right now. It's so far gone that it almost has to completely destruct so that we can build it again from the ground up, and that won't happen unless there's legislation, strong legislation in place to protect us. It's hard. It's so hard.
I don't think there's any silver bullet with it. And it's almost like it has to break and then you rebuild it.
Yeah. I mean, I could say a bunch of other stuff. Like I really think that in the coming years, people will recognize nursing as a STEM field profession, that we're not just there to wipe your ass and give you ice chips. Like this is a highly technical, highly skilled profession. Like the amount of science and math and all of that we have to learn before we even go to nursing school just to get accepted, people don't realize, so I do think that will happen eventually, and that's great. It needs to go in that direction. But as a whole right now, if we keep going on the same trajectory without some sort of huge intervention, it's not good.
Have you ever faced burnout, and how do you overcome it?
Oh, yeah.
What do you do to overcome burnout?
Ooh, it's hard. I think a lot of nurses can't. Like we're so far gone, especially since the pandemic. Burnout is pervasive and it takes such a toll on you, and I'm not one for, this is actually one of the kind of manipulation tactics that they do to nurses is if you just prioritize your self-care, you won't be. And yeah, that's my reaction. It's like nails on a chalkboard, because it's victim blaming. Like we nurses are having a collective mental health crisis because of the environments that you force us into, right? We suffer from moral injury on a daily basis because of the situations you force us into without any support. There's no mental health support for nurses. None. There might be one, what they call an EAP counselor for every hospital and an employee assistance, whatever, for thousands of employees that you have to wait 3 months to get into. There's absolutely no mental health support for nurses, right? That's problem number one. How are we going to overcome burnout if we can't even get the proper health care? Because mental health is health care that we need to overcome it. Right. But we need to stop with the whole just prioritize your self-care. If you just journaled every night before you went to sleep, like this is the kind of shit that they say to us, though.
Oh, my God.
With a straight face. They will tell us this, Yeah. You just need to like meditate before your shift. But you're lucky I'm even here.
Watch a YouTube video on meditation. Watch a YouTube video on meditation and do down dog.
Yeah.
And do some yoga.
Exactly.
To unwind after your shift.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
And do it on a free video you could see on YouTube, which is no expense to us whatsoever.
Right.
And we have no affiliation to that. So if you get hurt doing down dog, there's no recourse back to us.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck you very much.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Oh.
You've got it. You've pinpointed it. Yeah.
I was going to, a little over an hour we've been
Nailed
going,
it.
and I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, good hell. What's the one change you would implement in the healthcare system if you had unlimited power?
God, there's so many that I would want.
Pick
mandated
one.
staffing ratios, safe staffing.
That's a biggie.
Because everything else will at least be improved if you have that. So, for example, if we had a safe amount of patients for that specialty, that type of unit, whatnot, we would theoretically pick up on signs of patients or visitors that are veering towards violence, but we're too damn busy being pulled in a million directions, being interrupted constantly, that we can't even pick up on those nuances, Yeah. If we felt safe at work to talk about our working conditions, even just how much money each other is making, because they tell us we can't, even though that's a federal right, federally protected right to talk about our wages, right? If there was wage transparency and we could talk about that, if we could unionize without fear of retaliation.
I think that you should get together with every other healthcare influencer that's out there and form a little coalition and say, we want to start a union. And this is how we're going to, and just first it's awareness. Again, it's like a marketing thing, which is my jam.
Yeah.
First it's awareness. You build audience awareness about it. You grow your audience. And next thing you know, from that, you start getting some people writing checks, and the checks get either bigger checks and or a lot more of the $100 to $200 to $50 checks coming in. And you have a war chest where you've bought and earned a voice on the national stage.
It sounds great. And I used to say the same thing. Unfortunately, the way our laws are, we're not really set up to do that way in a national way. And that's, we need to pass the PRO Act, the Protecting the Right to Organize, which is one of the pieces of legislation that I said was so important. Because right now to unionize in this country is damn near impossible. And it's worse for nurses. So we need to get legislation like that would make it easier, that would protect us, that would streamline a union election process and all of those things. Right now, the way it is, unfortunately, you have to go kind of facility by facility, and it's painstaking and
oh my God.
Like hospital by hospital. Sometimes if it's one organization that has a couple different hospitals under them, sometimes you can do it as a group. But typically it needs to be facility by facility. It's grueling. It takes forever.
I would do a massive, again, you have to be well-funded. Everything takes money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But if you were like, Jeff, this is what we're going to do. How can you help from a digital marketing standpoint? I would take a massive amount of money and I'd be doing a video view retargeting campaign on Meta, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, which is a biggie that most people don't know is a huge one to put your message out. And you're just putting videos out about all of this, about your message. And you've got 4 or 5 themed ones with different nurses and talking about what they've gone through. And whoever watches 50% or more than that video gets even more info with more calls to action to go to a landing page to donate, and to be heard. It kills me that there's not a unified national voice.
Yeah, it's insane. There's a teachers union, right?
And in almost
Why
every
isn't there a
state,
nursing one?
in almost every state, the teachers union is the most powerful
they
union
are.
in the state by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Which is, again, extremely important. Education is
yeah.
right up there, but healthcare is right there too. And
there's a lot of similarities, though, between teachers and nurses, because the two most female-dominated professions, right? And because of that, the two most taken advantage of.
well, yeah, I have two kids going to school here. I agree.
Yeah.
Agree. I see it.
There's a lot of similarities. We sympathize with each other, nurses and teachers.
What's the common piece of advice given to nurses that you disagree with, and why? Shut up. Don't say anything.
Yeah.
Sorry to lead you, but
no,
from what we talked about, I'm like,
that's true. Nurses, they hate when I say this. And I sometimes kind of feel like I'm selling out my profession. But the fact is, the vast majority of nurses are very apathetic. And with good reason, because they have seen a million examples of their coworkers being retaliated against when they did speak up, being terminated, reported to the board for straight retaliation and doing nothing wrong. And so as a result, nurses don't speak up at all. And we're great at complaining at the nurses' station or in the break room. We are phenomenal at bitching and moaning outside of work. But you ask a nurse to sign the petition, put their name on a piece of paper, forget about it. You ask a nurse to show up to that meeting in HR, forget about it. You ask a nurse to sign a union card, a union interest card, oh, forget about it. Because the retaliation is so real and prevalent. So, apathy is, we are our own worst enemy, truly. Yeah. We are. Nurses don't realize the power that we hold. We're the largest workforce in the country, I believe. Last time I checked, we were. We're the largest workforce in any healthcare organization. Like, administration knows the power that we could have if we harness it. And so they put all of their resources into suppressing us and our voice. We have the numbers. We hold the cards. We just don't know that we do. And we're too afraid to put our name behind anything to do that. Yeah.
Last question, my love. What message do you hope to leave for the next generation of nurses?
Good question. Fight like hell, because if you don't, it will be you and your loved one eventually paying the price.
Well said. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
This has been this is episode probably 64, 65 for me. And this
we're at the same point. I think I'm at episode 63 right now.
And so it's funny because I've gotten better at, because I'm ADHD and I want to jump in and all that. But I found myself in this conversation, not talking over you, but coming in on the conversation where, as a podcaster, you're I've taught myself to step back, to let you shine and talk.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, this has been, I have goosebumps. It's been an amazing conversation. I thank you for your knowledge, for your vulnerability, for your candor. I applaud you for that. Would love to have you on again.
Oh, anytime. Let me know.
Would love to, and this is it'll do great, but want to kind of let stuff maybe like once a quarter have you come on.
Okay.
But also if there's certain things going on in the healthcare field in certain areas nationally that you want to get out, you call, text, bang on a log, let a signal fire, send a raven, do something, and
carrier pigeon,
and then we will get you on. We'll move heaven and earth to get you on and talk about that.
Yeah.
And then also, if there's other people that you've had on your show and I'm all in person, by the way. I don't do remotes.
You don't do remote. We do a lot of remote.
Yeah, and which is good.
Yeah.
But I'm more of when you have this, there's nothing better.
Yeah. I agree. This is great. I love your setup
Thank
here.
you.
This is beautiful.
My studio is awesome. It's Level 9 Studios in Vegas. Scott Vera is the fucking man. Full stop.
Yeah.
He is my brother from another mother, and I wouldn't go anywhere else. It's been a year and a half. We've been doing this together. We're
amazing.
a team, and he's fantastic, and he brings out the best of me. And so it's through our work, people like you come in here and speak. And if ever, like how you've come to Vegas and you're here, which the timing worked out great, which was awesome. If you're watching and if you're somebody that is in the healthcare field and have a story to tell, let me know. But if you know people that have been on your podcast and if they're coming to Vegas because like conventions all the time here, or just coming to Vegas to see Bruno Mars or whatever, I would love to have other folks come on to keep this conversation at the top of people's minds nationally. Is a big one just because for me, it runs much deeper. I love you, but it runs much deeper than us talking. Like the woman who I've never loved more and been loved more is a nurse.
Right.
And because of her, I have a fiduciary responsibility.
Yeah, that's great.
To bring this conversation to the forefront of a national conversation. And however I can with my little podcast, I'm going to keep doing that.
I love it.
So I tip my hat to you, my dear. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Erica, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? Where are the best places for people to listen to your message?
So I am at The Nurse Erica, and it's Erica with a C, on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, basically all of them. And I co-host a podcast called Nurses Uncorked. So you can find me. And nurseerica.com is my website.
nurseerica.com. Thank you, my love.
Thank you.